All right, I call this meeting of the Tacoma Park City Council to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Porter.
I'm here.
Councilmember Austin Lane. Here. Councilmember Barry. Here. Councilmember Clay. Here. Councilmember Stevens. Councilmember Sniffer. Here. Councilmember Williams. Here.
Are there any council comments or announcements? I want to start off by saying that prior to the meeting, we held a administrative function session at which we completed our evaluation of the city attorney. Administrative function sessions are not subject to the Open Meetings Act. This will be the last evaluation. The last session we'll hold on the city attorney's evaluation until next year. Any other comments? I saw Ruben first. Ruben? Okay.
I just want to say that I was very sorry to hear about the death of Sergeant Jonathan Calavero, who was a 2004 graduate of Columbia Union College. He died last Tuesday while serving as a medic in Iraq. He was killed by a roadside bomb while traveling with a convoy. He was 24. He is survived by his sister, Krista, a 2001 CUC graduate, his mother, Nadia, and his father, David, who serves as the superintendent of schools for the Greater New York Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. At CUC, he was an outstanding and popular student and an athlete as well. In Iraq, he served with a platoon whose job was to hunt for IEDs, improvised explosive devices. About 2 weeks ago, his platoon was featured in a story in the Army Times. He told the reporter, "With IEDs, either we find them or they find us." I did not know Jonathan, but my heart goes out to his family and friends in this time of terrible grief. I hope they can find some comfort there. I will hold them in my prayers, and I'm sure the rest of the council feels the same way.
Well, thank you for that, and certainly we all extend our deepest sympathies to the family.
On a happier note, I just wanted to let folks know that last Friday was Read Across America Day, and I want to thank a number of the members of the police department, including Chief Ricucci, for participating in that. The mayor and I also participated and read to 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders at Piney Branch Elementary, and that was the first time I had done that, and I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed the opportunity to read to kids, since my 8-year-old grandson doesn't live close enough by to read to, so I told him I'd be happy to come back and do that anytime. The mayor and I also helped with the Cub Scout Pinewood Derby on Saturday, and again,
Ruben did too.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. But you weren't there at the end for the finale. Again, that was a great opportunity to meet with and interact with and help local kids. I understand the kids in that pack are residents of both Tacoma Park and Silver Spring. The final thing, I just wanted to note, a couple people have had questions about something that arrived in their mail in the last couple of days, their stormwater fee from the city. And a number of questions have come up about why it increased and why it's a fee. And I just wanted to say briefly that the reason that it's a fee is in about 1997, the council went through a long process and felt that it was better as a fee rather than a tax, because that spread the cost around to everybody who was contributing to the problem. When it was a tax, only taxable entities paid, and in making it a fee, it spread it to various nonprofit properties that have a large contribution toward stormwater in the city, including Washington Adventist Hospital. So the fee replaced the tax. The equivalent amount for the tax In today's tax rate was anywhere between about 1 cent and 3 cents, and the reason that the fee went up this year from 28 and change to 48, we had a discussion about this, I think, almost a year ago. Among the reasons were that the Phase 2 implementation of the federal stormwater regulations is coming into effect, and there were a number of capital projects that needed to happen, so that I think it would be fair to say that the fee will probably not be going down over the long term as more of those costs roll in Phase 2 implementation. I would imagine that costs will go up. So I know that it's a hardship for people on fixed income, senior citizens, but at least maybe there can be some comfort in the fact that it's not tied to the tax rate anymore, and the costs are spread around among everybody who's contributing to the problem.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. I would just like to build on the momentum that Mayor Porter and Councilmember Williams and our police officers did with the reading program at the Piney Branch Elementary School, and suggest they continue their volunteer efforts with the Ruth Rails reading program at the Tacoma Park Middle School, where you would have an opportunity to go every week and let a child read to you. So I'm sure if you checked with the principal at the Tacoma Park Elementary School, they would be glad to include you in that volunteer service. Other than that, I would like to welcome everybody tonight. We have quite a few people in the crowd tonight. I especially like to welcome all of the Ward 4 residents and the members of the Tacoma Park Community Action Group, and I guess we'll be hearing more about, from you later. But welcome, and I see something down here on the deck. It looks like some cookies. Are you all partaking, or are you just leaving those behind for us? Thank you.
So I got to participate in the reading activity as well, and read to my own child's third grade class, The Quilt Maker's Gift, and it was a lot of fun. And I understand we had 9 people from our police department that came and read, which I thought was also a great showing. I received an email from Long Branch Sligo Traffic Calming Group, and they just wanted to remind me yet again that they're rip-roaring ready to go. So I thought I'd pass that on. We have some problems still with graffiti and car parts on Lower Conway, and I know Daryl said she'd get out and deal with car parts, but the graffiti's kind of a long-standing problem. When we were doing the budget last year, we talked about some artwork and different things, and I see we've got the Arts and Humanities Committee, and I want to kind of put that back out there to think about some ways that we might reclaim that space. I want to thank the Public Works Department for finally removing the stub from the sidewalk on 410 that State Highway should have removed or replaced the sign, but our guys have gone out and got the little bobcat out there and pried the thing out of the sidewalk, so that danger has been removed. I've had a question from some constituents along Elm about restoration of plants in the Elm right-of-way. My understanding is any plants that are in the right-of-way are just lost, and the homeowner has to replace them. Is that correct? Yeah. There have been some issues around drinking and trespassing in the Tacoma Woods area on the backside of Forest Park. Since our police chief is here, I'll just sort of shoot that right out there. People having maybe a little too much fun and leaving their beer bottles and other mess behind. The police department was on TV this week, and I was actually not happy about why they were on TV, but happy that they were on TV because it really demonstrated how we've had this series of crimes and trying to do everything that we can to apprehend the people. We happened to get some tape with them, and then that got out on the evening news, so their faces get out in the news, and we can help solve some of these crimes. And I thank the police department for being so proactive about dealing with this. And also on the issue of police information, I know I spoke about this last week or the week before, but I still would like to figure out how we can get some more timely information, because in some cases I'm learning about things that happen from my constituents who are being informed by the police department or from other listservs. So we're still talking about information that can't be private because it's being put out publicly directly to it must be the public safety contacts or something. It'd be great if I could at least get it at the same time that they get it, because sometimes I get questions before I even know that there's an email that's been put out. And the last thing is traffic cameras. I saw in the paper that we're going to have traffic cameras for Montgomery County, and last time when I went to the MML conference, I was approached by lots of different vendors who said that they could put traffic cameras in Tacoma Park and it wouldn't cost us anything, and they charge an extra $30 on the ticket, and they could plant them right there on 410 and catch the speeders coming down the road. Is there a reason we can't have traffic cameras that way?
There's going to be a discussion. I'm scheduling a discussion shortly about traffic cameras. And under the conditions under which traffic cameras are permitted in Montgomery County, everyone who uses them has to use the same vendor. And that vendor's already been selected by the county.
Okay. Will I get to meet them then at the conference, and they can sort of resell me on the idea and come
Well,
back?
I hope we can do it long before the conference, because
Okay.
I've been chomping at the bit waiting for the new chief to get here so that we could have this discussion.
Okay, great. I'm ready for traffic cameras.
You're talking about speed cameras, right?
Speed cameras, yeah. Good to have one on Lincoln Avenue.
I should note, just in addition to the event that Bruce talked about, the Tacoma Park Elementary School had a reading, I forget what they called it, but it was bedtime stories on Wednesday night, and the children all came in their pajamas and sat, and I got to read to them among a number of other people, and that was a lot of fun too. So, I think this idea of having people read to the children in the schools is a great idea, and I'm always happy to participate in it. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll go on. The next item is, for the record, I'm very pleased to do a proclamation on Children First Day. I don't know if Terry at this point would like to say a little bit about, since this came from the Tacoma Park Community Action Group, if you would like to say anything, or whether you want to wait till we get to public comment period and some of the members of the group can speak for themselves.
Okay, I did have want to have a couple of members of the
Well, then
Community Action Group.
the public comment period comes up next. So
Okay.
if you, as a matter of fact, we're now opening the public comment period, and since I've mentioned it, if somebody wants to come up and speak to it, I'd be happy to have them do that. The public comment period is the time for comments on items that are not on our agenda, regular meeting agenda, and since we don't have a regular meeting agenda, it's anything this evening. And we'd ask when you come forward if you could identify yourself and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and the councils. On behalf of the Tacoma Park Community Action Group, I'm very pleased to take this moment to share a few comments about the group. My name is Tababu Asapa. I'm a member, and I'm also the communication director. Okay. The Tacoma Park Community Action Group mission is stated. I hope by now you do have our first Pride and Joy, our magazine. We're very proud of ourselves. People say the comment that we'll be receiving
Looks
is
very
professional.
nice.
Yeah. And page 3, we do have the mission and members of the group. And on page 12, we do have our action plan for 2007. Briefly, the organization is very young. It was established in September last year. At this brief moment, our achievements are very remarkable. We're very proud of ourselves. We've done the first annual cultural fair in June. It turned out very beautiful. We plan to do it on a yearly basis. The title for the last one was Celebrating Diversity. And on the magazine, you see the pictures of that event. All right, our action plan for 2007 is also ambitious, but we feel very good. We're confident. And the items are listed on page 12. And the most important one is thank you very much on behalf of the group and the community. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for recognizing that day, because children are very, very important. And our member, Nicole, in fact, I would like you to join me. She came up with a wonderful idea. She has an organization called Child's Voice, and we're galvanizing our resources around that. And Mayfield is our rally, and we've invited the organizations and personalities prominent personalities who are organizing themselves around the issue of children. we're calling it Children's First. Everything starts with children. So we're very pleased with that, and the proclamation is going to give us a lot of support. We thank you. So in conclusion, the broader mission of the action group is to galvanize our resources and support, be very active to create a vibrant community. Our vision is so strong. So by galvanizing the support of like-minded organizations and the City Council and the business community, we want to bring vitality to our community. Thank you, and I'll let Member Nicole share the vision of the rally.
Thank you. My name is Nicole Kaur. Before I start, I'd like to talk a little about A Child's Voice. It's a nonprofit organization that was designed for children, any children that need any help, who are being discriminated against, not receiving even-handed treatment in the school system, or being labeled with having a behavior problem or some form of developmental problem. The problem exists. I am now in partnership with the Tacoma Park Community Action Group. I'm also a member. We have a serious problem in the school systems. It's wonderful that you guys have decided to go in and be a part of the school by reading to them, but there's issues in there that you guys need to know about, and this is the reason that made me decide about this rally. We have 87.4% of minority children reading below grade level, and this is only one school, one grade. In math, 82.6%. Now, with Caucasian is a substantially lower, 3.7. So we have a problem. What's going on? We also, let me just turn the page here. I was trying not to read from this, but it just happens anyway. I also would like to speak about the teachers. There we have some teachers who are good teachers, you know, but we also have some teachers that's not abiding by their own rules, and their policies clearly states if a child drops 2 or more letter grades, the parent is to be notified. They're not notifying them. A child is at an A, they drop to a D or an E. Between the first quarter, the beginning of the quarter, to the interim report, they have to notice that the grade is falling. I mean, a teacher, you went to school, you should know that. Also, I need to bring this up, and if a child gets into a fight in the class, they're kicked out. What, 2-3 days? But we had a staff member that got into a physical fight, and they're still working in the school. There was no repercussions, no reprimand. I don't know what they did, but that person is still there. So I was just wondering if that's the example that we're setting, and the consequences basically only fall on the children. When they're wrong, they're reprimanded. They're kicked out if they're fighting. But we still have a staff member that's sitting in the office every day with a terrible attitude, fighting, physically fighting. I witnessed the fight, and they're supposed to be around children to protect the children. Another thing, parents that are involved in the school system, when they go into the school, and I'm speaking on minority parents, they go into the school and they're treated differently. It's almost like, why are you here asking me questions about your child? I had a teacher tell me, 6 weeks ago, I don't know who you are. All I know is that you just happen to be a parent who happens to have a child in my class. Now, I didn't appreciate it, and I don't appreciate anyone speaking to any parent that way. One more thing, I'm sorry. Confidentiality. There's none in the schools, maybe with some. You have teachers who sit down with parents, and when those parents leave, they go to another teacher that has nothing to do with you or with your child, and they discuss private information. So when you go into the school, they're looking at you already with the prejudgment. So basically that brought me to the rally. I decided that children are not coming first, and they deserve to come first, and we want to celebrate children, as the Bible stated before. That's the whole purpose. We need to celebrate children, and we need to also, parents have a responsibility as well. Education starts at home. We all know that. But when they're in the school for 6 hours and they're getting, less attention, or, something is not right, and we just want to fix the problem. And I think the rally is a good start, celebrating children.
Thank you.
and
And I should note for the council that this is going to be on May the 5th. Children First Day is May the 5th, which
Yes.
is the same day as our meeting, our walking council meeting in Ward 4. And I'm very pleased that you've invited me to be there, and I look forward to it.
Yes, I'm glad that you'll be speaking. One more thing before I sit down. I was, Michael Collins, is it Officer Michael Collins? I heard what happened to him, and I just wanted to kind of say that I would, send my condolences to him. Do you know what happened?
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
The officer had a stroke last night.
Oh, we weren't notified of that.
And I
Barb,
just wanted, I didn't know that she didn't know, so.
we're talking about the officer that had a stroke? Okay, well, as far as I know, I don't know. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your kind words.
Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you. We need your support and guidance. And on a lighter note, we'd like to be remembered the group that brought the cookies to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Porter and council members. My name is Darrell Perry. I'm a friend of the community and a member of the Tacoma Park Action Group. This is not contrary to the event or the organization. I just need to bring this out. I frequently come up and down Flower Avenue, and there's a stop sign there that this gigantic bush sets out, and I run it every time. And that speeding, just don't see it in time enough. And I thought this was the most appropriate time to bring that to someone's attention. I mean, Tibabo has ridden with me several times, and I ran. You don't see it till you pass it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, you have the police chief sitting right behind you there.
He needs public works.
He was driving. Tibabo was driving.
So, well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think that is actually within our jurisdiction, because I think we have both sides of Flower, don't we? So thank you.
Hi, my name's Yard, and I just wanted to that the bridge near apartment 77 needs to be repaired, because if people walk on it too much, it may break, and a lot of people may die.
Which building is that?
And that's next to 4-7's Maple Avenue, and that's the bridge I believe we
The
just
bridge
got a
that
grant
leads,
to work on.
that has two passes that leads to the playground, and that also leads to the hospital if you're
Across
walking.
Sligo Creek, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe we just got a grant on the Safe Pathways to Schools program. Pardon? Okay. My mistake.
Well, thank you very much for mentioning that. We'll follow up with that, and whether we have to go to the people who run the parks or whether we have to do it ourselves, we'll follow up with that. Thank you for letting us know.
And if you don't have enough money, I'm suggesting that you put up a sign, a warning sign.
Well, that's a good suggestion, but I think fixing it is even better. Thank you.
Hello. My name's Pat Lovelace, 7620 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. First thing I want to do is give condolences to Jonathan, the soldier who was killed in Iraq. Second thing I'd like to do is ask the city if they can have some kind of proclamation or some kind of resolution and send it to our government about the shoddy treatment our soldiers are getting coming back from that war, and then facing rats, roaches, and red tape over at Walter Reed and other veterans hospitals and military hospitals throughout the country. I think, that it's a horrible thing that they have to go over there and fight that war. It's even twice as horrible when they come back and have to fight the war in our own land. Second thing is I'd like to invite everybody to come down on March the 17th. We're having a march from the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It's a Saturday, and we're marching over to the Pentagon to voice our opinion on the 4th anniversary of this oil war. Another good way to get our troops better treatment is we have to stand up and speak. If we don't stand up and speak, we're not going to be able to get our troops better treatment. We're not going to be able to get them home. A lot of money is being wasted on that war. Health care is being wasted. Money that's going over to that war could have been used to bring my sight back, maybe even fix my back. Yet they can afford to have those cluster bombs over there. Lockheed Martin, we're going to be holding them responsible for their behavior also. You know, a lot of these companies like Bechtel and several others are making big bucks off of this war. You know, and we ought to start thinking about that. Also, don't forget to turn your clocks back. I mean, turn them ahead. That is, spring ahead next weekend, because they've changed the time on that. It's no longer in April. It's now the middle of March. And I'm very, very proud to see a kid come up here and voice his opinion on that bridge. I would like to see, if it's possible, if we can get other kids in our school systems to come down here and speak on things that are on their minds. See, that would be one way of showing children first. If we can get the children and the youth to come down and speak up, whether it's their opinion on the war, whether it's their opinion on drugs or gangs, or maybe they have ideas that could help us adults become better leaders. I would love to see our children become active like I am. You know, this is what Tacoma Park is all about. That's what this flag is all about. America, speak up. That's what it's all about. And I'd like to see it happen. Now, again, March 17th, we're going to march on the Pentagon. And part of that is we are going to stop this war in Iraq and bring them troops home. And once we bring them troops home, we want better care. And I'd like to ask the mayor and the city council if they can have some kind of resolution and make our government accountable for those rats and those roaches and that red tape that our troops are facing.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it.
Now, I'd like to see what we can do as Tacoma Park as a leader of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, don't forget to turn your clocks ahead.
Hello, Mayor Porter, Council Member. My name is Diane Berkeley, and I have I didn't bring my paper with me, but I have problems with the disability. I was married February the 14th. My husband passed July the 5th. They said I wasn't married long enough to get his Social Security. And I don't believe that that is right. When you marry someone, it's not guaranteed that that person is going to live 9, 12 months, a year, or whatever. So if there's a way that it can be changed, I believe it needs to be changed. Because when people marry, they marry where the other person, if anything happened to them, can be taken care of. Now, there's common law marriages in some states. If it's common law and you can get things, I think if you're legally married, that you should be able to get it. My husband had a stroke. I was there for him for a year. I took care of him. We lived together 6 years before he had a stroke. And I don't think that is fair that I can't get anything of his because we weren't married long enough. You can get married, and before you get to the door, you can die. So I'm just saying, I don't think that's fair. I've got a petition I'm getting people to sign for me.
Yeah, I think that the policy around Social Security is made at the federal level. We would be happy to help you get in touch with your member of Congress, who's Chris Van Hollen, and the two senators, Barbara Mikulski and Ben Cardin, are the people who represent us in this district in Maryland, who would be in a position to deal with those kinds of issues. But we can get you information on how to get in touch with them.
Okay, I'm on disability. My disability is not minimum wage. I get below minimum wage. I'm not able to work. So I'm scuffing month to month trying to live. And like I said, I don't think it's fair when, you know, I can get his should be able to get his Social Security. Thank you.
Ms. Berkeley, I will get that information for you and get it to you from Congressman Van Hollen's contact information, and make sure that you get in touch with him and relay the issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
God bless you.
Good evening. My name is Emily Paulus. I'm a resident of Tacoma Park on Elm Avenue in Ward 2 and Vice Chair of the Tacoma Park Arts and Humanities Commission. I'm joined tonight by Patrick Stewart, Alice Sims, and Diana Kahn. First, I want to echo the sentiment that we need to have a place for children to express themselves, and I want to thank you for sharing a community need tonight. I'm here tonight to represent the Arts and Humanities Commission in voicing our support for the establishment of a performing arts space at the Tacoma Park Community Center, and to encourage City Council's investigation into the feasibility of developing council chambers into a multi-use space for public meetings, for performing arts, and for the community to express and share their ideas. At the request of City Council, the Commission developed a long-range master plan to facilitate the development of a thriving arts community in Tacoma Park and to use public facilities for art-related activities. This creative vision, cultural plan for Tacoma Park, was ratified by City Council in 2005. In the plan, we identified a need for spaces for the community to congregate and experience the arts, and spaces for artists to work and present. Goal 4 in this plan is the development of a versatile, accessible, and affordable venue, including maximizing use of the community center spaces. Since the grand opening, this community center has been a fantastic venue for cultural programs, all of which have been extremely successful due to solid community participation. In fact, we have heard on numerous occasions that residents' first time to the community center was for a cultural event. Clearly, this is a wonderful facility and is meeting the expectation to serve as a nexus where the community congregates, the success of which, in part, is due to being a focal point for the arts. It seems appropriate, then, that the next step is to create a space for music, dance, theater, and other performances. Members of the Commission have met in partnership with the Recreation Committee, along with city staff and some council members, to discuss options for developing these council chambers into a multi-use meeting and performance space. Last Tuesday, the Arts and Humanities Commission unanimously adopted a resolution, 2007-001, to support the investigation and development of a performing arts space at the Tacoma Park Community Center. A copy of this resolution has been included in your council packet this evening. We recommend 2 steps. First, during fiscal year 2007, conduct a comprehensive feasibility study on renovating this auditorium for use as both a meeting space for official council proceedings and as a venue for performing arts. We recommend hiring a consultant to assist the city in developing design alternatives and associated cost estimates. Such a consultant would need to be experienced with renovation, sound, stage design, accessibility requirements, as well as all the various sound, lighting, and audiovisual equipment needs, so that it can function dual purposes. Second, we recommend the city budget for fiscal year 2008 adequate funds for the implementation of the recommendations of the study. And I thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to speak tonight, and we will look forward to assisting the City Council as you move forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. We're discussing that later in the evening, and you're welcome to stay if you'd like.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Excuse me. I'm Howard Cohen. I just want to not repeat anything that Emily just said, but to second it on behalf of the Recreation Committee, which passed almost identical resolution about a month ago. And I will be back at the later discussion.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. Howard's usually a hard act to follow, but fortunately he was brief this evening. It's the meeting was already almost 45 minutes in, and it I'm sure reminds all of us why it's so great to live here, the level of community activism. But we also have reminders about the difficulty that many people living in our community have. I'm Seth Grimes. I neglected to say that. I live on Willow Avenue. As you may know, Montgomery County enacted a living wage bill in the summer of 2002. That law required for-profit contractors with the county to pay workers on those contracts a minimum of $10.50 per hour, indexed annually to the Consumer Price Index, which is enough to raise the families above the federal poverty line. In the words of Council Member Phil Andrews, who sponsored that bill, people who work hard for a living ought to earn a living wage. The county law applies to contractors with 10 or more employees and $50,000 or more in county contracts. It does not cover nonprofit organizations, contracts for public utility services, or emergency contracts. Washington, D.C. passed its own living wage bill last year with an $11.75 an hour figure. Now the state of Maryland is poised to join Montgomery County and other jurisdictions, including the city of Baltimore, in enacting a living wage bill. District 20 delegate Tom Hucker, who worked tirelessly to pass the 2002 county legislation, is spearheading the state effort with strong backing of Governor Martin O'Malley and the Maryland Labor Licensing and Regulation Commissioner, Tacoma Park Zone, Tom Perez. House Bill 430 reports that a Montgomery County living wage is $11.60 per hour. What about the city of Tacoma Park? Our contracting is small compared to the counties in the states, yet we do engage contractors for projects that would meet those jurisdictions' criteria. I therefore ask the Council to craft and enact a Tacoma Park living wage ordinance, building basic economic fairness into city procurements. The wage rate should at least match the higher of the counties and the states, and the applicability conditions should be at least as tight. While we all have good intentions, formal legislation to make economic fairness a part of city law will send an important signal to all concerned. We can afford it. We owe it to the people who work for us. Mayor Porter, would you please schedule the living wage issue for work session discussion soon to start the legislative process? I would ask the Council to act as if living wage rules were already in force in any contracting decisions made in the meantime. We're all entitled to a living wage for our work. Please take the necessary steps to make a living wage part of Tacoma Park City contracting. Thank you.
Although we don't have a living wage requirement, I know that the Council's decisions on things like contracting out in the past have been guided by those same concerns, and we have decided not to contract out for things like building maintenance because although we paid our employees higher than what we felt was a living wage, the contractors that we knew about did not. And so even though we could have saved money doing that, we decided not to do it because of that concern. So the Council has taken it into account in making decisions, some of which ended up, as I'm sure you realize it would, costing the city more money, but it was something that the Council felt was important to do. So that it has already factored into the decisions that we've made about how we deal with personnel issues. So I thank you, appreciate it. Anything else? All right, I believe Terry had something he wanted to wind up with.
Yes, I just wanted to thank again the members of the Tacoma Park Community Action Group for coming here tonight. I appreciate all of the work that you have been putting into this project. I compliment you on the magazine that is out. I think the community is just beginning to hear of the work that you're doing and the help that you're giving each other to move to a higher level of self-sufficiency and to a more vibrant neighborhood and community. I know that Tababu Asef said that some of the plans are in the magazine. I just wanted to also point out that the Action Group is also building partnerships with other organizations in the area. They're partnering with the Impact Silver Spring and the Core Parenting Team to help bring homework assistance to the neighborhood, partnering with the Joshua Group Ministries Church right here in our neighborhood for computer training and robotics club for young people, partnering with the Adventist Community Services, who has many programs such as expanded food program, computer training, English as a second language, GED training. They have a long list of services that we're working with them to see how we can bring those to the neighborhood. Digital Bridge is another computer training organization that the Tacoma Park Community Action Group is partnering with. And I expect by May 5th there are going to be some announcements on some of the programs that we're going to be able to offer. I again thank you all for coming. I wonder if you could stand up and show everyone how many people are here tonight.
Well, thank you all for coming.
And I'll also say I was also impressed with the number of people, including our young friend here, who came forward with things unrelated to the action group, but certainly important to the community. Thank you. You can have your seat, Pat.
Thank you all very much. Barb, city manager's comments.
Sure, just a couple comments. In regard to the community center, I wanted to let the council know the status of the installation of the second elevator. They are currently in the process of scheduling some inspections and some testing. Some of that will be outside their control. My hope is that they will get through all that process and that the elevator will be functional by the end of this month, but certainly I'll keep the council updated as that process moves forward. As I had mentioned last week, TRG Construction was on site with their subcontractors looking at some of the door issues that have been of concern. That work is still ongoing, and obviously we'll keep you updated on that as well. In regard to Phase 1 with James F. Knott Construction, I think as the council may recall from the last financial report I did, there have been a number of proposed change orders that have kind of been in play for some time where the parties had some disagreements. I did receive a package from James F. Knott on Friday that I'm still in the process of reviewing, but there were at least a number of proposed change orders where it appears that James F. Knott is prepared to accept the city's offer. So I'll continue reviewing that and hopefully have a report for you next week on that. Outside of the community center, a couple items I wanted to share with the council and with the community. Some of you may recall that we did apply for a grant through the Safe Routes to School program. I think someone had alluded to that earlier. We were advised last week that we've been awarded a grant in the approximate amount of $149,000. And I'd like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to Sarah Danes and David Sewells in particular, who basically was responsible for putting that grant together. The period for the grant runs from April 1st of this year through September 30th of 2008. There were two types of projects that the city had applied for funding for. One was an infrastructure project along Piney Branch Road. That portion of the grant application was not approved. The projects that were funded basically consisted of a series of educational efforts focused on improving pedestrian safety for children going to and from school. Chief Rakucci, as someone noted, is in the audience this evening. Obviously, we did have another commercial robbery last week, and I asked the chief if he would be willing to attend this evening and maybe give the council and the community some updates on what the department is doing in response to those incidents, and also just share some activities. So, Chief.
Good evening. Unfortunately, on Friday, we had another armed robbery of a business on Carroll Avenue. These robberies, which have been occurring since before I got here, the second day I was here, we have initiated, and I won't go into real specifics, but we've initiated a detail involving extra patrol officers and plainclothes officers that are on the street during various hours, especially during the target hours that the businesses are open. Unfortunately, they were on the street Friday, but we got hit again, and obviously we're disappointed. The good news is we've got some evidence to work with. As was mentioned by Councilmember Clay, we put this out over the weekend, and all the TV stations picked up on it and broadcast it. We are looking to Crime Solvers for a possible reward, which will go out. We're talking with Prince George's County, if this makes anyone feel any better. They had 5 armed robberies Friday during the day. As we tried to contact them when ours occurred, they were out investigating their 5. We do have a series, as it's been mentioned, crime has picked up in the Washington metropolitan area. These robberies most likely are related to drugs. What we've been doing is, after a robbery occurs, we are visiting the businesses next and around in the area. As a result of some inquiries we had this morning, I'll be meeting with a group of business owners and citizens on Wednesday night to reassure them of what we're doing and how we can improve in an effort to catch the culprits. We are committed. It's obviously our number one target in crime reduction right now, with the concern that it is being felt by the community. We've also requested some assistance from Montgomery County, which agreed today to assist us in our investigation. The more people, the more eyes we have on the street, the better opportunity we have of catching the culprits, which brings me to our citizens. We need your help. We need you to, when you see something, please call 911 if it's an emergency, or if you're not too sure, call 270-1100. The more citizens that get involved when they see something. We know that these robbers walked about 2 blocks before they committed their crime on Friday. We had a real good track from our canine dog. They'd parked 2 blocks away, ran up the street. So obviously someone did see them, and one of the things we'll be emphasizing in these community meetings, we need more eyes. Even though we have additional officers on the street, the more citizens that call in. Usually when we close a robbery case, it's going to be somebody that saw something, didn't think it was that important at the time, but then it turns out to be the lead. But a partnership with the community is we need the community's help. There's no call at this point we want every call. Everyone's serious to us, and we take every call serious right now. We will continue to keep the community informed. Obviously, I would rather be informing you of positive news, but we need to let the people know what's occurring, and we will continue to do that. And if you have any inquiries, please have them give me a call, and we'll do everything we can. But we have visited all the businesses that have been robbed and those next to them in an effort to give them some crime prevention tips. Any questions?
I appreciate your coming, Chief, and I appreciate your response. I know both Councilmember Williams and I contacted you with concerns that we had received from the businesses in Tacoma Junction, and I appreciate your prompt response to that.
Thank you.
And if I can just add that you are bringing something positive, which is you're being here and communicating these things, and the extra efforts that you've been taking and letting people know.
Yes, I also appreciate that. This kind of proactive action on your part is much appreciated by this council. I was glad to see the notice put out so soon after the event occurred on Friday, as well as information about the visual identity of the suspects. And it seems that the police department is really trying to reach out to the public for their help, and it shows. So thank you.
Thank you.
I had one last item. As the council may recall, last year Historic Tacoma had asked the council to serve as a sponsor for its annual House and Garden Tour, and the council had agreed to do so. I think the amount was $2,500. I did speak to Lorraine Pearsall on Friday. I think, Lorraine, you're still the vice president, correct? Yes. Okay. Make sure I have your title correct. And they are interested in having the council once again serve as a sponsor this year, and I had indicated to Lorraine that I would bring it up this evening to get some direction from the council.
As we talked about earlier, I think the council needs to have an overall discussion of how we deal with nonprofit groups in the community, but until we have this discussion, I would support that request. I'm seeing up and down head movements, I think.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Any questions of the city manager on any of those items? Okay, we can move on to the next item. We have a public hearing this evening. There's a proposal for development by John Arciola, and I think we're going to get the introduction from Lana Blanchard.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm bringing to you a proposal for a commercial development at the corner of Eastern and Laurel Avenue in Old Town Tacoma. This project has actually been before the council before. At this moment, though, it has been submitted to Park and Planning for review for site plan. The project will go before or go to the Development Review Committee, which is a pre-planning board step for the project for review by various agencies in May. I believe it's May 5th. and that's while the meeting is open to the public, it's an agency-only comment period. After that meeting, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to the comments at that meeting. The applicant will also have an opportunity to respond to comments made tonight by members of the community and the council. And then prior to going before the planning board, the applicant will come before the council again and for an opportunity for further discussion and a resolution on the project before it goes to the planning board. This proposal is called, for the purpose of the planning board, it's called Gilbert and Wood. It's proposed by Mr. Orsiolo, who owns the Tacoma Metro Center, which is along the entire side of Laurel Avenue, and this is one portion of that commercial development. And the proposal includes demolishing the shed, which is the structure in between the post office and the pizza movers, and then the new building will extend back behind the pizza movers and have an exit onto Eastern Avenue. This will also reconfigure the parking lot. There will be a new retaining wall built on the southeast edge of the parking lot, and it will extend some of the parking area and then build an egress from the parking lot to Eastern Avenue. There are no changes to the streetscape proposed. There will be some changes to the parking lot, including improving the stormwater, both the quality and increasing the size of the access to the city stormwater system, and also changes in landscaping. At this time, it probably would be appropriate to start the public hearing.
Okay. If people want more information, I believe I can't see that far. There's still copies of the.
There are no more copies.
There's no more copies, but does everybody who wants one have a copy of this? If not, can we get additional copies for anyone who wants them? And as I said, I don't know that I can see that far, but Terry, who's standing right next to it, maybe can look and see if there's anybody who's written their name on the sign-in sheet. I don't see anybody. Huh? No. Okay. All right. So. We'll open the public hearing, and would anyone like to comment on the proposal?
Thank you, Alana. I'm Seth Grimes. I'm president of the Old Town Residents Association, which covers the Philadelphia Eastern neighborhood just south of where we are now and abutting the Old Town area where this development would take place. I've had many discussions with people in my neighborhood about the commercial viability of the Old Town shopping district, about the attractiveness, about the nature of the businesses that would go in. And I would say that people in my neighborhood uniformly would view this as a very positive development to have infill with additional commercial outlets in this space in Old Town that would add to the viability of Old Town. In particular, people time and again say that they want to see a restaurant, and this development includes that. People are also very concerned about pedestrian safety in the intersection of Laurel and Carroll Avenues. One of the biggest issues there is that the current driveway to the Tacoma Shopping Center is two-way and is not controlled by the traffic signal, leading cars to exit from that driveway while the pedestrian walk signals are on. And this development proposal will make that driveway one-way, entry only, which is a very good prospect. So on behalf of the Old Town Residents Association, without going into detail of particular design or anything like that, which I don't believe exists yet, we view this proposal very favorably.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the issue?
My name is Sabrina Barron. I'm the president of Historic Tacoma. The proposed site is located in the heart of our historic commercial district. We've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Orsiolo as this project has developed, and we were very pleased to see the plan that his architect arrived at in the end of considering the design. I can echo what Seth said in expressing our belief, our opinion as well, that this will be a beneficial development and will help spark revitalization in Old Town. And we're grateful to Mr. Ursiolo for the investment he has in this community and for the care that he has taken with this project as it's gone forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
My name is Lorraine Pearsall. I'm Vice President of Historic Tacoma, and I just want to say, John, do it. We love it. It is one of the most beautiful examples of infill development in a historic district that we've seen. So, yeah, we're really excited to have it move forward. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to say that the job's going good.
Thank you. All right, I think Councilmember Williams wants to relay some comments on behalf of WACO.
Yes. I spoke with Bruce Moyer, the president of WACO, and I wanted to just, at this point, put on the record that Mr. Ursiolo has made various presentations to WACO, including one in January. That group is going to have their next meeting tomorrow night, and so at this point, they don't have anything kind of official to put in, but I wanted to make sure that they did have the opportunity to do so if they want to after tomorrow night's meeting. And so if we can hold the public hearing record open for whatever period of time, we usually do that. When we do that, I guess it's a couple days or till the end of the week?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll hold the public hearing record open until the end of the week. And we should anticipate that the Westmoreland Area Community Organization will transmit something for the record.
Okay. Alana, that will be timely enough to. Okay, yes. Good. Thank you. Okay. Did you want to add something?
Please. I appreciate John and his tenacity on this one, and I do believe that you have something of a design ready to go. Isn't that right? Okay, so I'm aware of a design that you put forward and have preliminary approval on. I think the community is rallying behind you and hoping that this goes as smoothly as it can in today's slow-growth county environment. And as always, we appreciate your presence in our community and your advocacy on behalf of the businesses. So,
and the council is going to have an opportunity to have a formal work session discussion of this issue. If there are no more comments, I'll call the public hearing to a close. The next item on the agenda is a series of interviews. We have Tibabu Asafa, Steve Shapiro, and Roberta Valenti. I see. If you want to come up here and sit at the table. All of you are applying for membership in the Council Compensation Committee. This is a committee that, following city code, is set up periodically, I believe every 4 years. Every 4 years to determine compensation for the council, members of the council. And we have reached the point at which we're required by the code to set it up again. And so that's the committee for which you all have applied. Whatever decision you make wouldn't affect members of the current council, wouldn't take effect until after the election. I guess the first thing that I would do is just ask you all what your interest is in serving the committee, why you are interested in applying for this particular committee, and I will start in alphabetical order with Mr. Asafa.
Thank you very much for another opportunity to speak. It's amazing. I just remember a while back when I was a little kid. I'm from Ethiopia originally. I was born in the capital city, Addis Ababa. And I don't know when, how, but as a child, I remember hearing about three cities, UC Berkeley, Madison, Wisconsin, and Tacoma Park, Maryland, as a very progressive city. And that was in the back of my mind. And before I know it, I'm living in Takoma Park. Before I know it, all my life actually I had lived with a plan to go back because that's where I wanted to raise my child. I'm father of two. Yared, the young, bright little boy, is my first son. And I had worked to go back, but dreams, I mean, life has its own ways of working out. And when I finally realized that I need to, home is the small globe, and we're all in a small village. And I was very, very proud to make Takoma Park my home. I like its vitality, I like its social responsibility, I like its community-oriented. In fact, there's no any other city that I've lived in a lot of places that has a sense of community that I long for. I think life is much more than ourselves. So in that context, I'm very happy to be a member of a resident. It's going to be my home. I'm going to make my home here. I'm going to raise my children here. So I'd like to be active in the community. So that's why I joined the Community Action Group. That's why I'm actively engaged. And this is another opportunity for me to fulfill my duty as a citizen. That's it.
Well, we very much appreciate that, and I would especially thank you because I know it's been hard in the past in getting members of the community from Ward 4 to participate, so we appreciate that. Roberta Valenti?
Yes, I also appreciate living in Takoma Park. I have served on 2 other committees. I've served on the Nuclear Free Zone Committee, and I've also served on the Firearms Task Force, the Gun Task Force Committee. And that one in particular, I did a lot of work with Corporation Counsel on the drafting of the language, and I enjoy that. Believe it or not, I actually enjoy that aspect of public service. So I thought this was another opportunity to make use of those skills. I do federal legislative policy work. And to me, the running of government, balancing interests, needs, taxes, and so on, is part of what I do.
Thank you. Steve Shapiro?
I've been here in Tacoma since 1980, the days of Sam Abbott as mayor, when council meetings would go till 2, 3 in the morning. And
Let's hope not tonight.
many of us say, if only the city and the council would do this and that. Some things I think the city and council did well. Some things we wish you did better. But without question, those of you who ran and are on the council are there because you want to be there. The money for the time, the effort you put in would never compensate. The city doesn't have that kind of money. But I do sincerely believe that there should be from the city an appropriate, fair, just compensation for your service. And if you wish, I would be delighted to be part of this committee.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the comments that you've made about your interests. Are there other members of the council who had specific questions for the people who applied? I don't know.
I don't have a question, but I do want to point out that there's at least one more person who's applied to be on this committee who couldn't be here for an interview this evening.
Well, they will have another opportunity before we go ahead and select the members of the committee. I would also point out, I assume you all have seen the portion of the code that applies to the work of the committee, and we were very fortunate 4 years ago to have a committee that spent a great deal of time and effort on this issue and gave us some very good guidelines. So you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from some good work that's been done in the past. Are there other? Yeah.
This is a question mainly for the city clerk. Is there a certain minimum number of people that need to be on this committee, or is it really at council's discretion?
It's council's discretion. It's not spelled out in the code.
Okay. And is there any time frame by which we can give the applicants an idea of when this is all going to be wrapped up?
Well, it needs
when does it
of
need to be?
necessity to be wrapped up prior to the election. And I think that the idea was that it would be well before that, so that, it was ample time for people to know what the decision was.
What I've been telling people who ask is that we're looking at a couple of months of committee work is what I imagine will be involved.
Okay, so once the appointments are made, then the committee can dig in and within
decide
a couple
their
of months.
schedule and yes.
Okay. I would just thank all of you for being willing to serve. We really appreciate people who do get actively engaged in what the council does. So thanks for your willingness.
And we do, in addition to the additional person that Bruce mentioned, there is also room for other individuals who would like to participate in this discussion. We have a fairly good representation from, well, 3 different wards sitting in front of us, and perhaps another from Ward 3 is the other person. But if anyone from another ward, or even these wards, would like to participate, you can make an application to the city clerk. It is not too late.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. I was just going to make that point that you did, that there's not a limit that it be one from every ward, that in fact we can have other members of this committee from other wards. I wonder if the council would like tonight to set a deadline on when we were going to close the applications so we can move forward with the committee.
How long has this opening been advertised for?
Months.
Months. Okay.
So maybe applications by March 15th? That's 10 weeks from now.
I have to say, the council recruitment has really worked. The council members who were able to recruit someone, that's the most effective thing in this case, I think, for this committee.
So it's our own deadline.
Well, and it's a thankless job. Y'all don't get paid at all.
Oh, no, I
so.
It's fortunately,
sit there to think about
it's
that.
fortunately a temporary committee. It's not one that is ongoing, so
Would you
you
like
make
a
it,
cookie?
you make a decision in that. I guess my suggestion, I'm sort of looking at the council members from the wards that aren't represented and wondering if you all have a thought about if you were able to do some recruiting, how long it might take you.
I have tried to recruit people. There's not a lot of interest in the committee. But I do have a couple other people. I'm sorry, just honest. I do have a couple other people who would express some interest. Jesse, have you received any calls from anyone in Ward 2?
I don't think I have no.
I'm not able to motivate a lot of excitement about it, but I can give it one more shot. I have 2 other people that I have in mind that would be
Anybody
possible,
who
so I could
contacts me,
lean
I
on a
will
little bit
follow
more.
Maybe if we could say the end of next week.
I think it's
So
a
that gives you
major.
2 weeks. And then we'll go ahead and see who's applied, interview them, and make a decision.
People dying to get on to cut the salaries.
So what date is that? Is that March 16th, 17th?
I'm thinking
no,
a
it's
week
March
from
16th,
Friday.
because March 17th is Saturday.
The 16th, all right. So let's say the 16th. And if the members of the council who think they might know of some prospects who would be interested, if they could get those folks to get their paperwork into the city clerk by then.
Let me just ask for a little advice from my colleagues. I had 1 or 2 folks who expressed interest but said, well, gee, if you have somebody, I'm happy to not do it. But do you want me to go back to them and say, well, we've only got a couple, we could use a couple more? You know, I could scare up another 1 or 2.
Sure, go for
it. If I did, I might have 4 on there.
Yeah. My sense is that the more people who are on the committee, the more representative it is. And so that would probably be a good idea.
I would agree that the more people who are on the committee, the broader the support for any change that is brought about. So I hope that other people will use this next week to recruit if you so choose. One thing that might help us, Jesse, is if you could send us the form that you've been having people fill out. I didn't realize there was that step involved, and it might be a way that we can push them to fill the form out by contacting them directly with it.
Show of hands, any volunteers? Got a lot of people here tonight.
Well,
there you go.
There you go. One from your ward, Terry. Okay. Well, you all don't have to sit here while we try and figure out what the deadline is. You've already applied, and we very much thank you for your volunteering. And I think that I speak for my colleagues, and that we would be glad to have you on the committee. So we will go ahead and make the formal appointments as soon as we make sure that we've got everyone who's interested to apply for this position. Thank you all very much.
So it sounds like we might be able to make the appointments by about the 1st of April, and that way the committee could get going and conceivably complete their work before summer recess starts. Summer vacation for them, kids out of school, et cetera.
Sounds like a good plan.
It should be known that we accept U.S. dollars, euros, Chinese renminbi, and for the first time, energy credits under the Kyoto Protocol.
All right. The next item is the work session discussion on the proposed development that the council heard the public hearing on.
Good evening.
At the moment, staff does not have any substantial recommendations to make. We're continuing to work with Park and Planning in terms of understanding the parking requirements for the site. The proposal, in accordance with mixed-use and transit-oriented requirements, proposes the maximum amount of parking that Montgomery County requires for shared uses on a site. And so that provides the parking for the site.
Okay.
But at this time, we have no recommendations.
Okay. And since the hearing was maybe historically non-controversial,
Probably.
I don't know if the council has any additional comments to it.
Just one or two. I wanted to first get a clarification from Alana. I think I heard you say in your remarks at the beginning of the hearing that the next time this will come back to this council is after the Development Review Committee meeting, but before the Planning Board?
Staff will, the next scheduled hearing would be after the Development Review Committee meeting and prior to the Planning Board hearing. However, if we have any substantial recommendations regarding this proposal that would require a change on the part of the applicant, then we would inform the council.
Oh, okay. So potentially there could be something before that.
There could be, but only if it was substantial.
Okay.
I mean, we do have minor comments in terms of what goes on the site plan and information provided. I believe the city arborist has like one tree type change, but those are very minor.
Okay. And those are, if I could just clarify for a minute, those are generally settled in discussions between the applicant and the staff.
Right.
And if I can just point out, as I know you're fully aware, John, that I know that WACO's prime concern has been the stormwater issue. And I would say that my characterization of their reaction that I'm aware of is that a number of the steps that you've taken have seemed to address some of those concerns. I think in the end, given the history of that block behind there and the efforts that the city undertook, I guess about 12 years ago now, with the special assessments, I know that people know from that history that their expectations don't necessarily get met. I know yours weren't met with that as well. So that I hope that this development project and the changes that are proposed to take place and the efforts that you're making will help alleviate some of those problems that people experience there with stormwater just about every time it rains. And so I'm hopeful, but I know that people are not holding their breath.
Right.
But I appreciate the efforts that you've made to step up and do a number of things, including you're trying the green roof on that should help. And the other thing that I just wanted to say was that it's nice to have something coming before us where there's the potential to add to the tax base rather than always seeming like we're discussing things that will be abatements or credits on our part for very good and worthwhile things like affordable housing, but it seems like everything we've been talking about lately has been losing taxes, and this will add taxes. It looks from the packet that it's on the order of about, what was it, $20,000 a year at the current value. So
I know, it kind of scared me when I saw it.
that was kind of nice to see in there.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. Mr. Urciola, I just wanted to thank you for working so closely with the staff members and the community members in developing your plans. It makes sitting up here so much easier when the people behind your building have expressed some support of your stormwater plans. The business community has expressed support for your plans. They're the ones that would be most affected. You and any other business owners would be most affected by parking problems. So when they voice their support for your plans, it certainly makes sitting up here a lot easier. I thank you for that.
Thank you.
John, as I said, thank you for your continuing efforts to redevelop that site. I think that it will make a large contribution to the commercial vitality that we are looking for and that our business community needs. A couple of things that I was able to listen to were at the WACO meeting Bruce referenced, and I was glad to hear people get their stormwater questions answered. I was also glad to hear them talk about cooperation with the adjacent owner, the property that joins yours in the back, and then certainly parking concerns continue for the Old Town area. I hope that as we go forward, I know that there have been many permutations to this, some earlier discussion about public-private partnership. I hope that as we go forward that you continue to discuss with the city what we could do to be helpful in that in a public way. So thank you.
I look forward to continue to do that and move it forward once we get the building itself moving to continue on working on the other aspects of the lots. Yes.
I want to add my thanks also for the outreach that you've done to the community and the time that you've spent working with people. I think it certainly has been productive in that, as I said, I don't think we've ever had a public hearing with there absolutely no comments on the negative side. So you must have done a good job of reaching out to people and dealing with their concerns. So
It's been a long time coming, but it's moving. So thank you.
And it sounds like the council doesn't have anything to add to the staff's short or non-existent list. So, but you, as you continue to go through the process, it's entirely possible that things will come up, yes. And you will get back to us, and the council will deal with those as necessary. So, but thank you.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thank you.
The members of the Old Town Business Association are coming to the council with a update and a request.
We're actually going to need some more chairs.
I'll take the back seat.
I don't see. Are there more chairs around?
There usually are.
They can't see me. I've lost a lot of weight. Love to have you.
Well, why don't you sit at the table, Roz?
Yeah, okay.
It looks like there's an extra chair. Why doesn't someone move up here?
Two more. Okay. We'll go with what we've got and we'll pull them in.
Okay.
My name is Rosalind Grigsby. I'm Executive Director of the Old Tacoma Business Association. I'm joined here tonight by two of my board members, John Hume, who's Chair of the Design of Sligo Creek Tile Company, and Dan Robinson, who's Chair of the Economic Restructuring Committee. And we're also joined by two business people, Greg Moran of Summer Delights and Jean Ha of Park Florist. You have before you some papers I put together trying to illustrate some of the work we've done, especially in 2006. I came before you in September to kind of talk about the previous 2.5 years. We are now approaching the end of the 3 years of funding you've given us. We're very grateful for that, so I want to start by saying thank you.
you've given us $25,000 a year for a 3-year period to really launch Main Street Tacoma. And we are here tonight to ask if you will continue that funding. Main Street Tacoma is the main initiative of the Old Tacoma Business Association. The Old Tacoma Business Association is kind of the vehicle through which the work of Main Street Tacoma happens. I would say 95% of what I do, maybe 97%, is all Main Street Tacoma work. The concept of Main Street comes from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. It's rooted very strongly in the principle of partnership, of pulling together many different factors in a community: churches, schools, youth, businesses, historic preservation, nonprofits, community groups, city governments, to work to a common purpose of commercial district revitalization, and in that process building a more vibrant, strong community of people engaged in the process. Witness tonight's City Council meeting, we already have a very engaged community. Old Tacoma, we're very aware, is not the only commercial sector in Tacoma Park. It is, however, the downtown of Tacoma Park. It is the historic section. It is, in many ways, one important factor in how the community identifies itself and what makes it feel like a community. The downtown is the living room of the city. It's where people gather. It's where activities happen. It's where a broad range of festivals, farmers market, church pageants, performances, the gazebo, all happen to happen in the Old Tacoma area. We are in partnership with the many stakeholders in the community in the purpose of Main Street, and we all benefit when historic buildings are refurbished with facade improvement grant money. We all benefit when local artists get highlighted by an exhibit in the storefront windows of an empty property. We all benefit when church groups and school groups perform at the gazebo, and when we celebrate all the facets of this wonderful community at the street festival or other activities like that. We're asking you to look at us as partners. In the materials I prepared in advance, I think one page was put in backwards, at least in the packet that I had. I don't know if it was in yours. I tried to demonstrate some of the activities we've done in partnership, as well as a reckoning of numbers, of kind of how to look at what we do with the contribution you make to Main Street Tacoma and the Old Tacoma Business Association. So if you have this page in front, it was put backwards in your packet. I took the numbers for 2006. For the $25,000 contribution the city gave us, we matched that in cash through primarily sponsorship from the Street Festival and membership funds. We doubled that in volunteer hours. I used the $18 an hour recommended by the National Trust for Historic Preservation as a way of getting a handle on how to value volunteer hours. We matched it again in in-kind contributions. So your $25,000 contribution was matched by a value of over $100,000 on our part. That does not include facade improvement grant money, which we have from Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. We hope to spend $25,000 of that grant money in 2007. That is matching funds. That will leverage $50,000 of improvements in facades in the Old Tacoma area, stretching from the Tacoma Junction to the Tacoma Theater. Also in your materials, I've kind of outlined accomplishments from 2006 and where we're heading in 2007. I don't want to belabor the point. I know you do your homework. What I do want to say is our focus is very much on partnership. We ask that you see us as partners in this process. We are already working with and for the city in many aspects. We're putting together a community meeting on safety and crime prevention. We're doing cleanup days twice a year. We're doing graffiti removal and trash removal. We're doing the facade improvements, city beautification. We host regular meetings to strengthen the skills and practices of local businesses. I'm working to build relationships with Melanie Isis of the Long Branch Business League, and I've met Erwin Mack of the Tacoma Langley Crossroads. And I'm hoping to continue to foster those relationships so that as a whole we can strengthen all the commercial sectors. We already invite those two areas, businesses, to our general meetings. I'm hoping that we can foster that relationships. We are already applying, we're in the process of applying for nonprofit status in DC, and we hope to seek funding from that avenue when we are established as a foreign corporation there. And we are pursuing other sources of revenue for the organization, which I think will be getting underway probably in the next few months. All Main Street communities in the state of Maryland, the 18 under the Maryland Department of Housing and the 9 in Baltimore, receive local government funding of some kind. The National Trust recommends their ideal is a third of a budget for a Main Street community comes from local government, a third comes from revenue-generating activities of the organization, and a third comes from sponsorship or membership funds. We are not far off from that balance right now. So I want to say again, I guess, that what we are seeking here is partnership. What we're asking is you see this as an investment in the town rather than a drain on resources. We try to use the funds well and wisely. We try to stretch them. We try to give you as big a bang for your buck as we can. What I'd like to do now is ask Greg Moran from Summer Delights to have a chance to say something, and Jean Hoff from Park Florist. So you want to take my seat, or?
I could never take your seat.
Or you could come to the podium.
That's too much work. Well,
You want to go to the podium?
What would you like me to, I say?
Come sit here. Greg, come sit here.
You want to come up? And then I'll throw it open to questions.
Ladies first.
Well, I'm Jean Ha from Park Florist. I started my business 4 years ago, and I was welcomed by this OTBA committee, and I feel very welcoming and friendly from the beginning. And I've been attending the general meetings not every month, but possibly a lot. And I got networked and got helped, and all this information that I needed, like facade improvement grants that I've got and I used. So I replaced my window, and then we used promotion for the advertisement together, and then I got more involved through the OTBA, and if I can voice myself through the OTBA. So if I have any concerns, any wishing for the business, I can talk to them, and we can get together, get some more ideas, and I feel like my voice is being heard through the people. So I really appreciate what OTBA is doing, and I would be appreciated if I can get fund from you again.
You don't need more time? Well, most of you are all customers, so you pretty much know my history. I can say, though, that when you have a OTB focusing on the needs of the group works better than the rest of us trying to figure out what it is we need. When I was involved in Flower Piney Branch, and we had put together an association there, and we had established that back in the 80s, you probably saw the whole corner change, and that was because 54 businesses were involved, and then through that, the county got involved. Through that, I got involved with the Block Grant Association, things of that nature. But you always need someone like Roz to keep it all together, keep the continuity there, so that the little guy is heard, even as big guys are heard. But when things work well, and I think they're working well, it inspires us to do other things. What I plan on doing in September will be the first annual car show, and I think because of it, we're so deep into the county and high up on DC, there's no place to go to show off a car unless you're willing to travel 50 miles. And I think that there's a lot of folks that would like to show it off. But in fact, that's going to show well for Tacoma Park. And I think Roz stressing the partnership is it's not really for me, I guess I want to sell ice cream, but it also brings more people into the neighborhood. And I'm not afraid to take on those kind of projects as long as I have situations I do like we had on Piney Branch, we have like with Roz. It keeps the continuity there, and it also helps keep a nice rapport, I think, between the folks that can make things really work well and keep us considered as just as important as any other entity that we have in Tacoma Park. But if you don't have ice cream or flowers, you have to go outside of the park, and when you got to go outside of the park, now you have to drive. If you're trying to save gasoline and you can walk up the street and get your ice cream and so on and so on and so on, so much the better for Tacoma Park. But I believe Roz and her predecessors has put it together well, and I would hate to see it fall apart because I've seen what it happens when it does fall apart. It just goes obviously the opposite way, and like somebody who diets wants to get off, they get bigger. Well, once you lose the continuity, it takes a long time to get everybody back into the sync. So I think it would be one heck of a good idea to keep the association alive, and I think that with the efforts of John, it's just going to make it that much more of bringing in the fall. Thank you.
Questions that we can answer?
First of all, I want to thank you all, and particularly the Business Association, for all the things that you've done, and I think this is a nice summary of many of the things that you all do. And we certainly appreciate all the officers and the members of the Business Association for doing that. And this is a good time for you to come to the council because the staff is just pulling together their proposed budget, and the council will be considering it within the next month or so. So this is a very good time for you to come before us. And I appreciate the nice summary of the things that you do that you've brought us.
Just a couple things. One thing I notice is how our business community really is able to share information with each other. I know that John Mangum, is that his last name, that owns the building Amano is in. He has that demonstration of a green roof. I was able to see it there. Maybe that's where John Urciolo was able to see it demonstrated. And there's just this wonderful synergy of people's ideas and actions in the old Tacoma community. I really appreciate what has come to fruition that may have begun back in the 1980s with some efforts by John Urciolo and Francis Phipps and Travis Price, where they really had a vision, and it takes several decades for that to be realized. You all are currently pouring your heart and souls into your businesses and into making this Main Street work, and I just really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of volunteer hours that are going into this. It's nice to see it quantified. And thank you, Roz and Mary Stover before you, for being such terrific program managers. We really couldn't do it without you. The city is so much stronger because of the association you've established and fostered and become partners with us on. I want to say a little bit about the gazebo events that took place during the holiday season. And I know how critical the holiday season is for many of our businesses. I heard people talking about those events, and the way they talked about them were like, finally their vision of what their hometown community could be was coming to fruition. It really gave me and others who I heard from a quaint small town feeling, and you also maximized a religious pageant that was going on nearby by bringing that attention there and coordinating it time-wise with the pageant that came after. That might have seemed magical to other people, but I know how much hard work went into it. and I appreciate what you all did to make that happen. I hope that you'll continue it. Anything that the council can do to really augment your efforts, please keep us informed. And thank you for coming to us now to let us know how far you've come and how much farther you'd like to go.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that everything you presented here was great. You're doing great work, and it's been very helpful the couple of times that you all have been here talking about things. And I'm fully supportive of what you're doing, and I'm fully supportive of continuing the 25,000. And I think Main Street is a great program, and keep up the good work. And I did want to just kind of say that in talking about the business owners that are here tonight, I'm also thinking that 2 representatives from Historic Tacoma are here, and they're now owners of a property in the area that you cover. So I'm assuming that they're also here kind of as
full members in good standing of OTBA also.
And on the board.
It's always good to make sure that what people who have been around for a while, or maybe I guess everybody knows, is Tacoma Junction, that it's part of Old Town, and that part of this effort, and I know that with Historic Tacoma doing what they're going to be doing with their building, that'll bring another nexus for things going on in the area.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. It doesn't sound like I have to remind my colleagues, but I'd like to remind the community of Old Town 3 years ago and how much progress has been made in the last 3 years, and just looking in the last year of how much progress has been made. You know, the holiday events, I think, really brought a hometown spirit to the Old Town, Old Tacoma area. And I think it's an important program. I think we've seen it's an important program in other cities, and so as we start working on the budget, I'm certainly going to be interested to see how we can continue to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for all the work that you do. I think certainly the image of the Old Town area as the living room of the city is a good one. I know my children really like the pajama-rama, and the opportunity to go downtown in their pajamas every year is one of their favorite things about moving to the East Coast. I also really appreciate the idea of working on the corridor all the way down through to the Tacoma Junction area, and the idea of a partnership. It's interesting because it's one of the arguments that we were making to the county about us as a service provider. I know you're coming and making the same argument to us as an organization, and I absolutely agree with that. I think it's a great way to leverage funds and leverage volunteer hours and all of those good things that you talked about. I get a lot of people who talk to me about the Old Town area, and they like it, but sometimes they're also kind of frustrated. And I was driving through town, and I know that the architects are out of the building because I went to go pay my architecture bill, but they're already gone. And I saw some other space where someone has apparently vacated, and there's like paper up on the windows around the corner. And I would hope that you would really strive to work to identify businesses that people are really interested in seeing, think about the way the storefronts look so that we kind of draw people along the corridor, around the corners. I know some of the storefront space is not very active. It's not dynamic in that sense, and I think that's so critical. And when I listen to what people say, I think about that. I think about how much that would help to have that kind of draw. And the last comment that I'm going to make is that I think it's great that you're getting incorporated as a foreign entity or whatever in D.C. To really continue that sort of flow and draw along all the way down to the Big Bad Wolf and the Savory 2 and those places, because I think that'll just help strengthen our downtown. There's those gaps. You know, the CVS parking lot is a big gap where nobody gets pulled along there. They only get repulsed. And so the Big Bad Wolf is kind of great. They have a really active, dynamic storefront. The puppies and kittens really help, and it kind of helps keep moving people along. Yeah. So.
I should have mentioned tonight that I bring the apologies of President of our board, Penny Jones Napier, who expected to be here and is very ill. so she didn't make it, but yeah, one of the partners of Big Bed was. And in response to the question about filling the empty storefronts, maybe Dan, you'd like to say something about the survey? You want my seat?
We put out a survey and distributed the link to it was an electronic survey, distributed the link on listservs around town, and to our astonishment, we got 875 responses, which in our mind is a large number. And of course, there were 5 questions that had open-ended responses possible. So multiply 875 times 5 paragraphs written out, and you'll see that you can imagine that there's a lot for us to paw through. But we hope that that will give us themes and plenty to work on as we try to shape real directions, concrete directions for how to fill up those storefronts and how to present options and opinions to people who want to come in. It gives us something really good to draw people in with.
As well as suggestions of the kind of business you'd like to see here. So we have, particularly starting point of businesses that we're actually drafting letters now, business recruitment letters to send out saying, we're the kind of place you'd like to be in. So we're hoping to get movement on those empty storefronts.
And just to address the storefront issue, I believe I know the storefront corridors that you're referring to. We do have applications out right now for the facade improvement program addressing the 2 elevations of that commercial strip. So we are in the business of making them look better, look more rentable, look more appealing. And also in the junction, down at the junction, I have 2 applications out for facade improvement that I'm waiting to get back on, and I'm making another presentation on Wednesday on it, yet another new business which is moving into the junction, and they are very interested in making significant facade improvements to the property that they will be renting. So we've got people who are excited about putting down roots and making a commitment to Main Street Tacoma and becoming part of our community. We are here to move that program along, and we'd love the city to engage in this adventure with us.
Greg reminds me, let me just interject, that the survey had a lot of response for existing businesses too, and there are some good substantive suggestions and comments and observations about existing businesses that will give us good feedback.
I really like still, after all these years driving downtown, I was there with my family just the other evening, and we were one of those weekend discussions about where do you go to eat, and we didn't want to go downtown, and Silver Spring was a ways away, Bethesda out of the question, but then we thought, well, not X again and not Y again, didn't refer to the ice cream parlor, there's only one, and the best one. But it would be great, of course, to have another restaurant there, and it sounds like the plans are going forward, because I think a lot of people would patronize it. The 2 points I wanted to make was, one, I still think the area needs more promotion outside of the area. That is, there's such great events and businesses there. There was a way to stitch together somehow the fact that the opera is close by, their rehearsal space, Liz Lerman, and I hearken to the booklet that the city has put out called Eat Tacoma. It's a very successful way in thematically stitching the entire city together. In this case, the theme is food. In another theme, it might be art, it might be architecture, it might be shopping. But those kinds of efforts that radiate out of the old town, but also encompass the other areas that are also worth visiting. One suggestion might be, is assuming the council votes to approve a continuation of the funding, maybe a part-time PR person could be brought on, a contract of some sort, who could help develop a plan for Old Town, much as there is also a plan for the Crossroads. I believe they have such a person, and it's been quite helpful in getting the message out about what the area has to offer. That would be one suggestion. The other would be working with Lonnie, the communications director of the city, with whom perhaps you've had some contact already. But I'm sure she would be very helpful in helping to identify some themes and some strategies and tactics for you. The other point is, and I noted you have reached out to the other areas, but maybe in this coming year to make it more of a regular happening. And I'm thinking that the other business districts have a lot to learn from your expertise, especially with regard to design and architecture and facades. Let's face it, we have some challenges, facade challenge, especially over on the other side of town. And I think having a meeting of the minds and some exchange of expertise and best practices would be very good. Plus, you folks have a lot of contacts that some of the other business districts don't. And if you would be willing to share those contacts, it may be that the kind of redevelopment that we're looking at on the other side of town, you may be able to help with that, and they may be able to help drive traffic to this side of town. And then I'd like to conclude with a question, and that is, what's happening now with the new apartment construction, the eco farms or whatever it is down the street and some of the other places? And are you looking towards the completion of these things as a way to stimulate some new traffic downtown? And what do you surmise this might mean in terms of new business and filling the storefronts and doing the other things we talked about?
Sure. The corridor between the clock tower and the Metro and beyond, around the corner to 4th Street, and then even around the corner to Blair and going out that way, is a great opportunity for more storefronts. And then there's a lot of housing units going to be built there, all the way around where the B&B catering is. They're 100 and some, almost 140. Thanks, Greg. 140 going in there. Sure, it'll increase traffic, and it'll fill in that area, the kind of corridor. And it's true, CVS is not the best place to walk by, and that property owner, in fact, we're reaching out to the property owners along there and trying to encourage them to keep how it looks, what they're putting in, how it'll help the business community, have that firmly in mind. And the developer who shall not be named, who put the CVS in, he regrets having put that CVS in there in the design he put in, and in fact would like to redevelop that corner. Well, CVS sort of dug their feet in and said, not until our lease is over. But that's not that far away. And so things roll out slowly, but they're rolling, and they will roll all along that corridor. So.
Yeah. If I can just respond to some of the cross promotion. We, last week, I think, put together a joint ad in the Gazette's 101 Things to Do in Montgomery County or in Lower Montgomery County. We did a festival ad. Street festival, folk festival, film festival, jazz festival, home and garden tour. And we all went together with a little bit of money from the Arts and Humanities Commission and a little bit of money from a local business to get in the book for, as part of the calendar of events. We did the diorama down at the Metro station. We got an extra 3 weeks, if not an extra month of coverage, because I think that no one else had rented that spot. So they shifted us around a little bit, but, Tacoma Park was highlighted for 3 months at the Gallery Place Metro station. And we hope to do that quarterly, has been our plan. I'm not quite sure how fast we'll get the next one together, but thinking of ways to promote the area as opposed to the more traditional advertising we've done of individual businesses taking a slot in a group ad. And we're trying to think of continuing that as an option, but also more of an umbrella ad that says, come to Tacoma Park, things are happening. So we're looking at that, and I've had in the back of my mind ways to collaborate with the other business commercial areas in the city to see what we can do.
Okay. For a last comment, I guess. What dovetails in what you're saying is the double-edged sword here is the parking. You get the people coming, and you frustrate them for parking. So, unfortunately, this is sometimes a tail wagging the dog, and It's probably, again, it's a fragile situation as far as Raj keeping it all together. She has to be able to tell newcomers that, yes, it's coming, but at the same time, we got to show a site that's being built. So now this is with the advent of John getting his approval, and we get things going. One of the most important things is if you're going to invite them to a pool party, you better have a pool with water in it. And so the parking, and this is probably where the city, as you can see, we're pretty much not an orphan, but we're pretty much handling it as orphans, and we're doing this because of survival. Plus, we like our neighborhood. I really enjoy the neighborhood. I enjoy going back to a time where people have respect for people. But the parking is probably always going to be the biggest issue, and it's probably something that expeditiously should be handled as quickly as possible, as you've probably heard 100 times. And I think that that's going to be part of what makes all this work. The business, as I am and everyone else, I knew it was 140, I know it's 60 at the end. We look at the numbers, but what we also look at is they're going to be so expensive, they're not going to want to cook in the house. They're too tired from working. So they're going to come out, and they're going to want to visit. So the other, we try to teach the other businesses, you got to start looking pretty now, because eventually when it happens, it could be a big gorilla on your back, and if you're not ready for it, it can happen. But I think the parking is probably the biggest focus that we need to do on and work on. And not to be negative, but Saturday morning is Seventh-day Adventist time, and they swamp the parking, including the private businesses. And so that's all, we're all bidding for them. And of course, when they leave, they leave. They don't shop. They're gone.
Gary, I'll interject by saying we have on the table through the Economic Development or Restructuring Committee a parking guide, the Gorilla Guide to Parking in Tacoma Park, and we have a plan which we have to try to roll out to encourage the Adventists to park on Saturday morning in the lot behind the community center across Eastern, around from where John's putting his building. And we have an in through John with the pastor and some input with Mr. Kershaw as well on trying to structure that Saturday morning slot and put the parishioners, the Adventist parishioners, into the habit of both parking a little farther away and shopping locally once they get out of their services. So it's not done, but at least we're thinking about it.
That's
right?
a big
We've got a
gorilla
draft.
moving.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. I'll be real quick. It's getting late. I just wanted to mention that, you're addressing Old Tacoma, and that's really important. We have a very small pocket commercial district in our neighborhood, at Maple Avenue and Sherman Avenue, and in the Park Ritchie Apartments. And it would be nice if they could share in some of the, at least the expertise and the information that you have. And what I think of brought this to mind is there's an empty storefront in our neighborhood right now where the dry cleaner moved out, and you're going out and looking for businesses. You very well may find businesses that don't need something as big as what's available in Old Tacoma. It would be nice if we could share that information with the business owners down here in our neighborhood, and if we could look for ways to work together.
And to a great extent, that's one very good reason why OTBA general meetings are open to everyone. And as far as membership, in fact, in OTBA, I know my business is not within Main Street. My business is not within the OTBA's general focus area. Dan, yours actually is not either. We would welcome anybody from Maple Avenue. Please, they are more than welcome to get involved, to join, to come to our meetings. We are in the reaching out business.
I'll mention that to the business owners here locally, and I'll also draw to your attention the fact the county master plan does have an overlay zone in the Maple Avenue area for some additional neighborhood-friendly commercials, such as an ice cream store. So keep
Only
that in
one
mind.
room for one.
Oh, you haven't seen how many how many residents we have down here.
I'll feed them all. Not a problem.
Nice little storefront available too.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, I don't want to drag this out either, but I do want to say, as someone in Ward 5, pretty far away, the other side of the city, we do have a couple of businesses, a handful of businesses in our area, and they very much would need the expertise that you guys can provide. And so the outreach efforts that you guys have talked about and that Doug outlined a little bit, I really wholeheartedly support. Hope you will take that up.
If there's, I have a what I call my master friends and family list, where I send out all the notices about meetings, and I send out a monthly newsletter now. So if you can help me, I mean, I can email you tomorrow. If you can help me get contact information, I'm happy to add anybody in. As John said, all our meetings are public. All our outreach is open to everyone. So we are happy to try and make those connections.
Thank you.
That's a terrific idea. I have to say, I'm seeing ways that the city's investment in Main Street is just having even wider spread impact. And the two things that I heard you all offer were the importance of the commercial corridor and the need for parking. And I am very interested in the city seeing what we can do as John moves forward with his project to increase parking on that end of Carroll, well, on Laurel, actually. But then also, if you think about the other end of the corridor, really the only open space for development is the Metro property. And I've talked with some of your board members, and am very interested in the business community looking at that prospect for development, and maybe just putting forward those two priorities, is that there be extra public parking in the Metro development and that it continue the commercial corridor. I think that you will have widespread support for residents who are interested in seeing something happen there, residents who are concerned about the proposal that is on the table and want to see an alternative design explored. But we do, your presence has been felt at every time there's a hearing, but I think that there is an opportunity for the businesses to come forward and say that is something that we have a special interest in, and our livelihood depends on it. So I hope at the board level that you will move forward considering what your position will be. And of course, I do support the extra year funding.
Also, I know that we're unfortunately a car-based society, but I think we're also looking for the segment of the larger marketplace that are day trippers who come by Metro. And this may give, an opportunity for us to focus on a certain population within the greater D.C. area that may not have cars or may not choose to drive them, but still have the purchasing power to take a day trip out and take a trip down Main Street. And maybe as a strategy in the future, it might be worthwhile to see how that group can be targeted while at the same time we work on developing more parking.
Well, thank you all very much. I want to second what my colleague said about the work that you all have done. I do support the additional funding, and I think that it's been a good investment for the city, as the long list of things that you've done and the money that you've raised have shown. I think it's been a good investment for the city in terms of the stability and the well-being of our business association, which translates into tax base, but also into the benefits for the community and the feeling of a sense of community. So I think those are very important, and I do think it's worked well in the past, and I feel that we ought to continue the funding and continue the partnership with you all. It's not just money, it's a lot of other things that you all have done and we have done with you that has been very beneficial, I think, not just for the business areas, but for the entire community. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The council will take a brief recess and come back to the final two items on our agenda. council member Bruce Williams. He's standing right over there ignoring me.
He's talking to a constituent.
He can do that over here. Come on.
No,
No, actually, he's talking to a
He's talking
fellow
to a
council
colleague.
member, a colleague.
Bruce, do you want us to do the auditorium without you? The next item is a discussion of what the council wants to do with the auditorium renovations. I don't know, Barb, if you had a plan for how we would start this off, but I'd like to turn it over to Bruce to give us some background. I think we want to do several things this evening. One is to catch up the council and the public on the discussions that have happened so far, because as Councilmember Siemens noted, where the discussions are now are different than where they started, and there's reasons for that, but people don't know what those reasons are. And I think the second thing we need to do is make a determination as to where we go from here. So I'm going to turn it over to Bruce for his comments.
Okay, well, I don't want to take us into the weeds, but I'm not going to. I'll just say that I thought it was going to be a lot simpler than it appears to be, and the more we started looking at options and rejecting them for various reasons, the more different concerns came to the fore. We talked with various people that we brought in. There were some sound people who came in, consulted with John Salmon about ADA and access issues. The more you get into it, the more you see that all of these pieces have to hang together. Lonnie had some concerns about making sure that we can still have adequate facilities here without a lot of person power to make that happen every week, that there's some setup that remains that doesn't get disturbed, and still have other things going on in here. So I think it generally involves some reconfiguration of some space, some extension of stage, some thinking about how different things work in here, and we kept trying to reach out to other experts who could bring something in, and I think it just needs to be a comprehensive look at it, rather than kind of rolling from one question to another and keep finding areas where we need more information.
I think what I'd like to do is sort of separate the discussion into two parts, and first make sure that the council, see if any members of the council have any questions about why the direction we thought we were headed isn't turning out to be the right way to go. Are there specific concerns that we need to address at this point? Okay, all right, so maybe we can go on to what it is we'd like to see. Do you have something you wanted to say about that? Or should we turn it over to the group here? Okay, so I guess the next question is what would we like to do with this space, and how should we accomplish that?
Well, you already heard from me during public comment. I didn't know that I would have this wonderful opportunity to come back and sit before you. So I'll let my colleagues at the table begin, and I'll jump in for the Arts and Humanities Commission as appropriate.
Okay.
Maybe you could summarize what you said briefly, just because I wasn't here.
Certainly. In representing the Tacoma Park Arts and Humanities Commission, and through the work that we did to develop the cultural plan, creative vision, a cultural plan for Tacoma Park, among several things, we identified a need for a place for artists in the community to work and present, a place for the community to congregate, to experience and participate in the arts. And this building has accomplished that on so many levels with the arts exhibition program, poetry series, film festival, and now the holiday art sale, that the next step seems to be we still have this need for performance space, whether it's music, theater, poetry, larger poetry readings, and that we have an eye to this space because it is an auditorium with seating and a stage, but that we also recognize that the space needs to be multi-purpose. It needs to function as a public meeting space for City Council, but that hopefully in the strategy for what this building was supposed to be with many multi-use spaces, it seems appropriate to now turn to this council chambers and looking to see how it could be multi-use. So we really see a need. And we would also recommend, as Bruce explained, that it would be appropriate to hire a consultant or take the approach of bringing someone in who is an expert on this and come up with a feasibility and options plan. We looked at bringing in different expert resources, looking at each of the issues, and every time we came up with something, there was another question that came about, and so that the Arts and Humanities Commission is in full support of the Council's discussion of this issue, and we encourage you to move forward. And one of our main recommendations is to bring somebody in and have a real feasibility study for the Council to review the various options and cost estimates.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add just one thing to what Emily said, one of the first things that we did as an Arts and Humanities Commission was to do a general survey of the population and what they think about arts and humanities and what they're looking for. And the number one item that came back on that list was performance space, because it's at such a premium here. Yes, there are performance spaces in the schools, and once the kids are out of school, those spaces are basically off limits except through ICB, which makes them very expensive, and there's not that much use of them by individual artists and musicians because it's just cost prohibitive. And so there's, as I said, that was the number one need identified in our surveys.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I can add actually one more thing, just building off of Diana. We have the studio space, and we also have the dance space, which has been used by a lot of classes. It would be wonderful if they had an opportunity to perform. I was impressed by a young man earlier tonight who got up during public comment, and he shared a concern that he sees in the community on a particular bridge, structure of the bridge. But I was thinking, you know, people need a place to express their ideas. And when we talk about performance space, yes, we talk about concerts, but I also like to suggest it's an opportunity for the public to perform or do spoken word, to do a variety of things, which is part of civic engagement, that we really do need a place to do that. We've tried different spaces in the community center, especially with the poetry reading. We ended up moving several times. We first started in the atrium on the second or third floor, depending on the staff level, staff office floor. It's a beautiful, beautiful space, but the sound quality, so many echoes. Anything going on in the police station 2 floors below, you hear. And so it really isn't a good space to present. We use one of the meeting rooms, but it can get crowded or hot, or, you know, and so there's a need for a larger place to present and for the audience, and for an audience.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Well, I was going to say that I don't think so much has changed from where the conversation was left. We're picking it up pretty much where it was at, which is, as Emily and Diana have said, that all along there's this belief, and I think the council shared it, that this space should become a performance space. The question really is just how you do that, and what our group has tried to do is figure out what the questions are for you to answer. Some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller. As Bruce said, some of them are just weeds. But fundamentally, in order to make this into a space that's used more than just on Monday evenings, we need a plan. And I think our general feeling is that you ought to hire some professional who can present to you the options, what they cost, the pros and cons, and then you can decide.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Lonnie?
Not really. I think it's clear that this room needs to be renovated regardless. We need better sound, better lighting, better audiovisual presentation equipment. And I'm delighted that the Arts and Humanities Commission has come up with this resolution to recommend that to you. I think we know that comprehensive planning is probably a better way to go in a large project. And then we can proceed and budget accordingly.
I think Howard's correct that the council's intention always was to make this more of a multi-use space and more usable for performances in the arts. And I think it's just a question of how that happens. And if I remember when Bruce first started working on this, we on the council, everyone on the council thought it was a fairly simple issue of simply making the podium movable. And I have had a few discussions with Bruce since that time, and I do understand that, you know, you solve one problem and another one crops up, and you solve that one and another crops up. And it seems to me that we could continue down that road, solving one problem at a time for quite a long time. Or the other way to approach it would be to hire somebody who has had experience with this kind of design work and can maybe, you know, approach all of these issues simultaneously and give us a sense of, you know, a range of ideas and a range of options that we could put some money into and come up with some space that would be more usable for more different things than this space is now. And personally, I would support that approach. I think it sounds like a good solution to the difficulties that various people have encountered in trying to make this space useful for more things.
I would definitely like to support this approach as well, and I would hope that for $100,000 we could not only see options, but maybe even develop the actual architectural drawings that we would implement. I don't
think the 100 is for the feasibility. The 100 is for the whole renovation itself.
If I may, just to be clear, this was obviously what we try to do when the staff puts together the CIP every year is to sort of look out for five-year period and identify projects that there may be some interest in. That $100,000 figure was basically the staff's very rough guess, kind of taking into account what we thought it might be for replacement of chairs, carpeting. I guess I just don't want to have anyone look at that number and think that's what the budget is. It was basically sort of a placeholder, if you will, based on staff's best guess, but that's what it is. None of us are architects. We're not technical consultants. And I should just note that, as is the case every year with the CIP, funding is basically determined on an annual basis, so this is not a funded project. So I think obviously we won't really have a good idea of what the options are actually going to cost until we hire someone. I think at this point the direction I'm looking for is whether the council has enough interest in this approach for staff working with the Arts and Humanities Commission to even put together a request for proposal and solicit that, and obviously any contract would come back before the council for approval.
And if I can just add.
Do you want to continue?
Sure. Maybe I didn't read this. Do we have a ballpark number for the feasibility study?
I mean, it's obviously subject to whatever the market will bear when you go out and get proposals and who we deem to be the most qualified, just as kind of a reminder. And there are different scopes of work and probably different degrees of specialization. The gym feasibility study was about $40,000. This is certainly a smaller scope project, I would envision, but I'd hate to hazard a guess about what it would cost.
Less than 40,000.
I would hope so, yes.
Way less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Porter. You know, when I read the materials for this meeting tonight, I started to get nervous. I thought back about the community center project, and we started out with, desire expressed for a gymnasium. That people started talking at the public comments that there were other things maybe that we would want to look at too with a recreation space. And so the council formed a committee that went out and came back with a whole lot of ideas and said, we need a consultant to help us with this. And we contracted with a consultant to come out and give us some options and prices. And lo and behold, many years later, now we have a design that was much bigger than a gymnasium, and we have a project that is partially completed, but still no gymnasium. And it's like, here we go again. We wanted some stage space for performances. And we could remove the Diaz because it's only used once a week. Have a quality portable Diaz that is collapsible. We can take down and use microphones that aren't attached to the table. And yeah, we wouldn't have a big backspace, and we wouldn't have a backstage, and we wouldn't have a big fly-way out for our fashion shows. We might want to build a ramp or something, but it wouldn't take a whole lot of dollars to have a performance space where we could do poetry and we could do kids programs, we have bands, we could do a lot of performance. And no, it's not the ultimate performance space, but I think it's a different way of looking at, you know, a community space. It's, do we build something that's super and all-inclusive, or do we do something that's going to provide space for the kids in the neighborhood and for the different art programs and I just I think I see us doing the same thing we did before with the community center, of taking something that's kind of simple and blowing it up into something that's much more complex and much more expensive. I've heard that you know, you've got to have fixed microphones and we can't have a portable Diaz, but I would remind my colleagues that when we committed to building the community center, we committed to having the council meetings in the Azalea room, and we didn't hear from staff at that time that there was a problem with the portable tables or a problem with the portable microphones. And in fact, there was some discussion about whether we should go ahead with the cameras in the Azalea room, and the council decided, rightly or wrongly, to not go ahead and procure those cameras at that time as a cost savings measure, as the community center was costing us more and more money. But I'm troubled now that that this is coming back, that we have to leave the permanent Diaz to be able to have good quality sound, when that wasn't the recommendation in the original plans. Anyways, the bottom line is we don't have a gym yet. We're still going forward, asking for money, trying to collect money for a gymnasium. I'm really, I would say more than hesitant. I'm just not going to vote to commit money to convert this room into a performance space, as long as we're going for a top shelf approach to it. I think if it's you know, tear out the Diaz, provide this room for the community except for one night a week when this council's in here, and let's, you know, see how we can do that, I can support it. But right now, if we're going to hire a consultant, I would suggest that this community would be better served to hire a consultant to help us do our budgeting in a more efficient manner. So that's my feelings, and that's kind of how I plan to vote, unless I'm persuaded by my colleagues to vote differently.
I think you're setting up some straw men. I think the point of a consultant is to give us options. I don't think anybody's going for gold-plated or all-inclusive, but I think what we want to be in the position to do is whatever increment we invest in this, whatever we do, we don't want to find out that, oh, if we had only known, we would have done it differently because there's some other piece that would be advantageous to do or simple to do to add on to it, and we're ready for it, and I think that's just the proper way to plan. And I don't think this council necessarily made the decision to not have us meet in the Azalea room purely based on cost savings. I think there were a number of issues involved at the time, and I think the prudent thing to do here is to get some comprehensive advice on what makes sense. What may come back is that the best way to do something that will make this much more multi-purpose, yet keep this space usable for us without a lot of work on the part of people who we don't have to set it up and take it down and make it ready for us, is to go forth with some kind of stage addition or modular stage, ramp, no ramp. How do we do it? Does it involve taking out chairs? If we change anything to the front of this stage, it involves possible rewiring of any of the audio-visual stuff that's under this stage. How complicated is that? Is there a reason to do it? Is there a reason to go another direction? And what's involved with using this space, and how what's above us here is done, and it also gets into the desire to make it a little easier for presentations that happen in our meetings. When the screen has to drop, we have to get up and go around, and when people come in with presentations that happen on easels and set up with the big sheets of paper, it's like, where do you put them over here so that we can see, so that the audience can see? Are there some simple ways to deal with those kinds of issues in addressing what we might do with this dais area that will make it reasonable to address a number of needs, I would hope, in a relatively inexpensive and simple manner? And I think we don't know the answer to that until we ask all those questions and get somebody to look at them all together as a package.
Well, I'm willing to give up my spot at the dais and my microphone, and even my chair. I think if we were forced to stand and had no microphones, the meetings might be shorter. But that said, as I've said several times in the past, I absolutely support hiring a professional who knows about the development of stages and theater spaces and usage and ADA requirements and sound systems to give us some sound advice, and I hope after they give us the advice, of course, that we will follow.
Yes, I wouldn't mind a folding chair myself. I don't need a lot of wood, and probably lowering us a few feet would put us on a par with the people we're supposed to be serving. I favor a kind of Goldilocks approach, not the gilt edge, and certainly not a sheet over the dais here, but some information about how, with maybe a few baffles to improve the sound, especially for voice or music, and perhaps lighting that you could actually adjust. I can do this in my living room with one of those fader bars. Here you can't. It's neon glaring all the time. So I think that for not a lot of money, you ought to be able to get some advice as to how to transform this in a modest and affordable way so that it could serve this purpose. We just talked a few minutes ago about making the downtown area, of which this is a part, a destination, including for the arts. And this is an art-centered place with more artists per square foot than probably any place else in the region, and we don't have a functioning place for performances to occur. It's like having a violin with no strings. So I think that this is a perfectly reasonable approach for us to take, as long as it's modest in price and get some options and see what we can do. We may choose to do nothing. It may all be unaffordable. But until we know and have that information, we really won't be able to tell. So I would hope that we would go forward and find a reasonably priced consultant and generate some options for us.
I second that.
Ditto.
Okay. My sense is that there is consensus on the council, with one exception, for moving forward to get some modestly priced options. I didn't hear any support for the guilt-layered approach. So I think that we're looking for modestly priced options. And I would hope that we could find someone who could give us a good plan for a modest price also. I don't think if we're not, because of the circumstances of this building, and because, we're working with an existing piece of, property, the flying wings are just not going to happen anyway. So we're talking about what we can do with a fairly modest area here. And so would hope that we are not spending a great deal of money being told that, what we have is fairly modest and we have to do something fairly modest. So I would agree with where I think we're going, that that's what we want to do. And so my sense is that the city manager is authorized to go forward with something that's not too costly, with the notion that we're looking for effectiveness and cost effectiveness in what we do.
I would just say that I think, to my mind, that until we decide not to build the gym is a priority, and that's where we ought to be putting all of our extra resources that we have.
Okay. I think we're finished, unless you all have some other
thank
thing
you.
you want to add to it. It seems like we're moving forward with this, and I hope, and I'm sure you all will continue to be involved in the discussion, because I appreciate your contribution.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the final item is the legislative report.
I will actually be pinch hitting for Suzanne Ludlow. It's her mother's 75th birthday, and figured she didn't need to be interrupting her family celebration this evening. So I'll do my best, so I'm not Suzanne. Obviously, this is a very, very busy time of year for both Suzanne as well as a number of other staff members. I think as she indicated on the agenda cover sheet, staff has been in Annapolis submitting testimony on a number of matters. There will be a hearing coming up on Tuesday, March 13th, dealing with the electric energy aggregation bills, and I believe that Mayor Porter has agreed to go testify. One of the things that Suzanne asked me to mention this evening is that there will be presentations on the bond bill request for the city's requested gym funding this Saturday, March 10th. As scheduled, at least, the hearing before the House Appropriations Committee will be around 12 noon and about 1 p.m. before the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. It is very, very important that even though we have very limited time, that the city be well represented, and I know Suzanne has sent an email to the council about this, asking to have some of the council members be present as kind of a show of the city's support. I would mention that this is likely a almost all-day commitment by the time that you need to leave around 10 o'clock to get to Annapolis, find parking, go through security, wait for both the House and the Senate hearings, which never start on time. So Suzanne did ask me to say your time commitment, probably leaving around 10 in the morning and not being back until about 5 on Saturday. Are there any council members who believe that they will be able to attend on Saturday?
I'll go.
Okay.
Is she driving?
I think Suzanne will be driving if you'd like to catch a ride, okay?
Are you going?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay. Anybody else be able to go?
I'm sorry, I can't. My husband will be out of town this weekend, so.
If anyone's scheduled...
They'd love to sit there all afternoon.
And you'd love to be around that.
If anyone's schedule does open up besides the mayor's and Councilmember Clay's and you're able to attend, please just let us know. The other items that Suzanne asked that I bring up is to see if the council wanted to take an official position so she would know how to handle certain matters. There is a bill about the Maryland Affordable Housing Investment Fund. It does appear to be a very good program, but it would add 2 cents on the state property tax. The House has already had its hearing. The Senate hearing is actually tomorrow, and Suzanne wanted to know if the council wished to take an official position on this proposal.
I guess, if I could just say, I guess my sense is that I don't know that much about it. I think getting more information out would be helpful, but I'm a little bit concerned about the council taking a position on what's a really important issue without more public notice and public involvement. I don't know, Colleen, what were you going to say?
I think in general, this mechanism has been effective. I know Fairfax has been really happy with theirs. It's generated a lot of money, but because of the way the tax structure is built in the state of Maryland, and because we have to tax on top of everything else, I think that it could end up being a significant burden, given that as it's written right now, we wouldn't qualify to use the funds. And it's like kind of that feel like once the tax is in, it never gets removed, but they could change the people who were eligible to use the funds. And I would hate to see a 2-cent property tax increase at the state level get approved, exclude Tacoma Park from being able to participate in spending the funding, when instead we can support the other enabling legislation in SB 710 and continue to work for the city itself to be able to do that kind of an action and control those monies within the city. I think it's particularly critical for us where we provide so much affordable housing. I can see it'd be really easy to just kind of leave us out of the equation, even when the county was looking at ways to distribute money, their monies. You might say, well, let's put this money into some areas that don't already have some affordable housing, where there's a much greater need in the sense that there's no other affordable housing in the area. So I don't mind not taking a position, but I certainly wouldn't take a position supporting it.
My sense is that, and I think Colleen makes some good points, my sense is that this is part of the larger discussion that we need to have as soon as we finish the rent stabilization issue about sort of long-term affordable housing needs within the city. And I'd like to see, obviously funding mechanisms are one of those things, and I think this may be a bit premature in addition to the other reasons for us to take a position on at this point.
I'll relay that to Suzanne. The second of the 3 issues that she wanted me to bring up this evening is the proposal to increase the homestead property tax assessment cap to 15%. This is a bill from Delegate Hickson. Suzanne did indicate in her notes to me there's obviously no obligation on the part of the city to weigh in on this, but she did ask me to find out if the council either would like more information on this or if you would like to take an official position.
If I can make sure that I understand this correctly, this would essentially make it so that if the current 10% cap on homeowner-occupied properties would go to, at local discretion, 15%.
Right.
I think we should oppose it. Because I don't think I could justify telling people that we support seeing their taxes rise a whole lot faster than they are now under the current cap. I think 10% is a good figure. It slows things down. 15% would accelerate it, and most of the savings from the homestead credit that people see now would disappear very quickly.
I don't particularly want to support it, but I would like to point out that with the 10% cap now, the effect over the long term is that people who have been in their housing longer pay, and they pay less in taxes, and you can get a taxation inequity side by side in neighbors. I would point out that someone passed around a copy of their own property tax bill and looking at when their full-on assessments would kick in, and I think it wasn't until, was it 7 years that it was 2013 that it would take before they came to the full level. And if you compared that to somebody that was their next door neighbor that just bought their house, they'd be paying full taxes now. And coming from a state that used a different mechanism but that had a similar effect, where we had people living side by side, where one family, because they, by virtue of the fact that they lived in their house for 10 or 20 years, paid $600 a year in taxes, and their next door neighbor paid $6,000 a year in taxes. I mean, that was really very common. And I think one of the interesting things that has happened out of the rapid assessments unusually rapid assessments that have occurred in this area, is that for the next 7 years, there's going to be a big discrepancy between people who have lived in their housing for 3 years or more and people who are coming into the community. And when we talk about creating long-term affordability for housing and who our new neighbors are going to be, and as turnover is going to happen as people come into Tacoma Park, what impact that's going to have on the demographics of our community and affordability in our community.
I guess I don't have a strong feeling on this bill. It's enabling legislation, and certainly no community would be required to do it. I guess my major concern is, again, I think this is an issue of policy, and I think it's hard for the council to take positions on things like this without having had a public discussion.
The last issue was House Bill 1148, which would basically prohibit the imposition of rent control anywhere in the state. As it is currently worded, there doesn't appear to be any exemption for municipalities that currently have rent control, meaning Tacoma Park. There was a lobbyist for the bill that did contact the city, said they would be willing to support an amendment. This obviously would seem to be in conflict with the council's stated position that it would curtail the ability of any municipality in the future to make decisions about rent controls within their own community.
Since we have had numerous discussions about this topic, I think the council's already taken a position in effect on this, and I don't have a problem opposing it, since it is in opposition to a consistently stated policy of the council for many years.
I agree.
I see a lot of nodding heads, so I think I have clear direction on that one.
Oh, I'm not nodding my head.
Okay.
No, I'm not nodding my head.
Sorry,
either.
I can only see certain parts down the dice.
But I'm sure you get
Yeah.
4 nods.
I really strongly oppose this because it takes away the option.
Yes.
You know, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 or 15 years. The situation could be very different. I don't see why we'd want to constrain any community this way.
And basically, I think that we should oppose this for 2 reasons. One is that it's inconsistent with a long-term city policy, and the other is that, in general, the city has taken a position in favor of sort of local authority, that, we should be, municipalities should be able to do what they think is best for their community, which I think is the same as what you were saying. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, is there anything else in terms of the report that we need to talk about? All right, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.